everyone, welcome to the first part in my burial rites series. This is Spice. He's here with me today. I didn't plan to show him so quickly, but he's here with me today. But before I jump right into things, I thought I'd show you my earrings. So some of you might remember that I said I bought earrings just for your exam day. So I have decided to wear them in all of my videos as well. And they are my You Got This earrings, because you got this. Also, not sponsored. All right, let's get into things. So the question for today is, what role does absence play in Agnes's life? So pause the video and have a little go at answering the question, and I will see you in 15 minutes. We will see you in 15 minutes to discuss what we wrote. Okay, so I have set myself a timer for 15 minutes and I am going to get started. Okay, so I know that the first thing I need to do is unpack my question. Unfortunately, I have not been given a cognitive verb today, but that's okay because I know that I'm just going to write in the word analyze, because that is what I'm looking at. Absence is my subject, particularly, of course, in Agnes's life. Now, I'm going to need to break down what each of these things mean so that I can make sure that I understand what I'm being asked to do. So when I'm looking at the word role, I'm thinking it's kind of like the impact. And when I'm looking at absence, it's like the lack of. Maybe it's like something missing. Not too much to unpack in this question, but of course it's always important that I understand exactly what I am being asked to do. Now what I'm going to do is do a little bit of brainstorming about this question. Now, of course, in the exam I'm going to have two questions that I'm going to need to break down, but today not so much. So when I'm looking at the word absence, I'm going to have a think about where I see absence or things lacking or things missing in burial rites. Now, I definitely see an absence of control, love, family. I'm going to start thinking through my cultural assumptions, so power, because obviously due to her class, her gender, all of that kind of stuff, faith, stability, I'm also going to think through my concepts that I know, so I might talk about like humanity, belonging, justice, redemption, a home. Now I could keep going, but this is kind of the gist of what I'm thinking. Now, I know that I've got to look at how this kind of plays an absence in Agnes's life. Plays a role in Agnes's life. So I'm going to start thinking about which of these are the most, I guess, impactful. So control, definitely. Love, definitely. But love kind of links into family, perhaps, which links into friends. You can see how stability links in here. Humanity links into like all of them, really. So does belonging. I can see how these link together. I can see how these link together. So we know that when I'm looking at my planning, I often like to see a connection and see how they kind of go together. Now, what I'm seeing here as I'm starting to link them together is that so many of these things are like basic human needs, the things that we know that we need to survive. So I'm kind of thinking perhaps there's something there. So my thinking here is that the absence of basic human needs play a major part in Agnes's life because this is what leads to her fate ultimately. So I'm going to try and put that into a bit of a thesis statement. Now, my thesis statement here says, absence plays a major role in Agnes's life as it is the absence of basic human needs that lead Agnes to her fate. And I don't love it. I think it's clunky, and I don't think it flows very well. However, I think it has the basic gist of what I'm trying to say here. So what I'm going to do for now is I'm going to make a note to myself that I'm just going to highlight it with my QCAA approved highlighters. And the reason I'm doing this is because I would hate to forget that I wasn't happy with it yet. But time is of the essence, and I want to start brainstorming what my arguments could be, and then I'm going to come back and perfect my thesis statement. So I know I'm going to center my essay around basic human needs. Kind of gone back to my brainstorming from up here and thought how it could apply to my more focused idea. So I'm looking at the human needs that Agnes lacks being power, identity, control, love, human connection. I know with human connection that what I'm looking at here is I'm looking at belonging. And through this, I'm looking at the fact that she never really has a firm family, or a home, which of course links back up to love here. So there is a little bit of a circle that's going on here. In terms of control, she doesn't have control over her story. She doesn't have control over her fate. She doesn't have control over her representation. In terms of her identity, this is also going to link back into representation. But also like her attitudes, values, beliefs. And then also looking a little bit at her, like her name sort of thing around the town and whatnot. When I'm looking at power, this is when I'm going to start to look at things like gender, class, religion, all of those things that strip Agnes of her power. Now, of course, I'm going to need to think of some evidence at this point. So I'm going to need to start to think about, well, what in the text allows me to know these sorts of things. So when I'm looking at her story, it reminds me of that quote that's like, everything was taken from me. And of course, I'm just making notes, so I'm not writing the quotes out in full. I'm thinking about, you know, at the start of the text when Agnes says, we are all candle flames in the darkness, about vanishing, that quote right at the very beginning of the prologue. I'm thinking of that and almost like that motif or even that symbolism of light. So I'm just going to write candle in prologue just for now. Identity, it also reminds me of this everything was taken from me quote, so I'm going to make a note of that. I'm also kind of looking at that, you know, the Agnes Jonsider, she sounds like the kind of woman I could have been. So that's going to remind me of that. And the part that's like, if no one says your name, you will be forgotten, I am forgotten. When it comes to power, I'm almost thinking about I am thinking about when Bjondel says refers to her as particularly godless. And also I'm thinking about all the different times when she was referred to in the text as being unmarried, illegitimate. I'm also thinking of when Margaret referred to her as the landless workmaid raised on a porridge of moss and poverty. With my brainstorming then next to me, I'm going to have a think about what my body paragraphs could be about. So I'm definitely seeing a lot in terms of being a big part of it, because everything I kind of planned initially looked like it was reflective of that. So I'm going to look at absence of control. Space, because underneath there I'm going to plan out what I'm going to write in my paragraph. Another thing that I'm seeing a lot of popping up a lot is the absence of identity. And then thirdly, the absence of power. So when I'm looking at these three ideas, now we know we might have 2 body paragraphs, we might have 4 body paragraphs, it doesn't really matter. But at this point I've got 3 because I know that that's typically what we see in an essay. I'm gonna start to have a think about explaining these, because I know that I'm going to need to expand on my ideas once it comes to writing. So when I'm looking at here, I might look at the fact that, as my notes say, the absence of, in terms of the absence of control, Agnes has never had control over her story or fate. Or perhaps because I know my thesis statement is looking at leading to her fate, I might say she's never had control over her story. And then I might say thus leading to her fate. So that's kind of what that paragraph is going to be about. When I'm looking at evidence, I've got the quote that I said from before. I imagine taking parts of it out because they're not relevant to what I'm saying, but also maybe I don't remember parts of it because I'm in an exam. I'm not going to use a plus sign in my exam, but in my planning, I think it's going to be okay. And then I haven't really left myself enough room, have I? There is also, I have told the truth. I'm out of room, but I know the rest of that quote. I'm going to start to think about the devices that are here. So my first quote that I've popped there, I know that that's metaphor, but also motif. So I'm going to make a note of that really messily because I didn't leave myself enough room. And then this quote here, the I have told the truth and you can see for yourself how it has served me. I'm going to look at that. Now, when it comes to the absence of identity, I kind of want to have a look at how this led to her lack of, how this led to Agnes's lack of humanity. She was kind of like reduced to what everybody thought of her, right? So reduced to public. So kind of like she was just a murderess. She was just a murderess. She was just a murderess. She was just a pauper. She was just unmarried. And then therefore, I could look at how she never really stood a chance. Again, I'm not going to talk like that in my actual response. In terms of the evidence that I could use here, I definitely have that everything was taken from me quote. So everything was taken from me and altered until my story was not my own. I've learned from my mistakes. I'm just going to write it in shorthand there, and that. Look at that in terms of the fact that it's a metaphor. I'm going to look at the sounds like the Agnes Jonstede sounds like the kind of woman I should have been. Sorry, sounds like the woman, not the... And then there is that part that says, if no one will say your name, you are forgotten. I am forgotten, from the end of the text. And I'm going to look at that in terms of lexical choice, because I think the word forgotten... Now moving on to my third point, I'm going to look at how the absence of power was very indicative of that of the times and places. So I'm going to make a note of that. Times and places, and I'm going to look at it in terms of class, gender, and religion. And I'm kind of, again, going to look at the aspect of it. There's so much I could choose from here in terms of my evidence. I'm going to kind of have a think about Yondel in particular. And I'm almost thinking about that part. I don't know why I always say almost. I am thinking about that part where it says, it's like from the end of the text, he means to cripple me with waiting before stretching my neck. He wants me to break. He wants me to break. He's taken away the only comfort I have left in this world because he is a barbarian. So I'm going to look at that. I'm going to look at it in terms of the fact that the particularly godless part that Björndal refers to her as, which I could look at in terms of narrative viewpoint, I could look at it in terms of dialogue, and I could have a look at it. And then also Agnes being referred to as an unmarried, which again I'm looking at in terms of lexical choice, because those words there are obviously quite raised on a porridge of moss and poverty. I know I'm going to remember that in the exam because I'm just always thinking about porridge, so using it to my advantage. Here I could look at it in terms of characterization, but also the other kinds of tools that we've spoken about earlier. And I am looking at this as quite a mess, but I know that it makes sense to me. Okay, I've obviously color coded it and I understand it, and that's all that matters. Now that I've got all of this planning down, it's time to relook at my thesis and see what I've planned and how that fits in with my thesis. So absence plays a major role in Agnes's life, as it is the absence of basic human needs that lead to Agnes to her fate. So the word catalyst is coming to mind because I know it's a great word and I know it was a word of the day. So I almost want to make it seem that like it was the absence of Agnes's human needs that were the catalyst in her fate. So let's see if I can reword that to make that. Okay, so absence plays a major role in Agnes's life, as it is the absence of her human needs that are ultimately the catalyst of her. Now I could make it say is the absence of humanity, or I could make it say, I could link it into something like that. So I could say like the absence of, no, human needs works here, I think. I think it works. As I start writing my essay, I might think about it again. And by might, I mean I will think about it again. But I think that this is a pretty good plan, and I think I'm ready to write my essay. Okay, so it has now been 15 minutes, which means it's time for me to stop. And hopefully this made sense to you. If you need anything clarified, or you have any questions or comments or concerns, or if you did yours super duper differently and you just want me to confirm that it's okay, because you probably did do it differently, and that's okay, because we know a good essay question and will enable lots of different responses. But if you want me to check over anything, of course, please send it my way. Your challenge now is to get up, stand up, do 10 star jumps, drink a big glass of water, go hug someone or something in your household. Maybe it's a cat, maybe it's a teddy bear, maybe it's a family member, and do what you need to do. I personally would now use this plan as perhaps an essay that I could write, but I don't know what your day looks like and I don't know what you have planned to do. Please make sure you let me know if you need anything at all. Thank you very much for watching. I feel like I should say, don't forget to like, comment and subscribe, but if you are one of my students, please do not like, comment or subscribe. But if you're not my student, then, I mean, why not? All right, have a wonderful day. I love you all very much, and I will see you very soon. Bye.